Hi, I'm Adrian Newton from the James Hutton Institute, and I'm standing here in a field, a trial on our farm, which is to produce biomass from winter cereals and winter legumes in an efficient way. This particular trial is using pea, barley, oat and vetch, and we have a couple of different nitrogen inputs as well. This will be cut as whole crop and then baled and used as silage. So it's about efficient biomass production. So we need a system which has low inputs for fertilizer, herbicides and fungicides. Nitrogen, we need a source of nitrogen, so that's why the legumes are in there. We also need relatively clean field because we're only going to deal with weeds by competition, and relatively little disease. We can deal with disease by the diversity within the crop to a certain extent. The legumes contribute fertility, and so these work best if you do the whole trial with little additional nitrogen in the form of fertilizer. What's important is optimizing the choice of densities and proportion and component number of the different components of the mixtures we put in here. This all depends on variety choices, particularly the legumes. Legumes, you've got to match vigor and aggressiveness to the proportions. So very vegetative, late peas, they can be quite good. Amongst vetches, there's a lot of variation, but again, relatively aggressive vetches are quite useful. Beans, we move away from because basically they often have just too much water to produce good silage. So that's the legumes. In terms of the cereals, less critical choice of variety, and oats and rye give lots of biomass. Barley and wheat can contribute substantially to the quality. We need to keep the cereal densities quite high because this is the way we outcompete the weeds. And in terms of other issues, then bird damage is the one that we really don't have an answer for at the moment. We at times don't get any bird damage or very little, but we had one trial this year where the pigeons took all the peas out of the trial. So this can be an issue, and we don't have good answers for this at the moment, except sufficient numbers of legumes in the surrounding area to deter that particular target on a particular area. The diversity adds resilience, and other agrochemical inputs are generally unnecessary once the trial is sown. The other important thing about this is the legacy effect on subsequent crops. So particularly with oats and legumes in the mixtures, we find there's a really positive contribution to subsequent crops. So if you direct drill into the stubble afterwards, and we've done this with various cereals, but what works best, particularly for wheat direct drilled into the mixtures which had high proportion of oats or the legumes, we found, particularly the legumes, beans and peas, we found that it gave anything up to about 30% yield increase in the wheat compared to wheat which followed barley or rye. So we need to look on this sort of cropping as part of a whole system in order to look at the economics and the general benefits throughout the whole crop cycle.